Welcome, everyone. The bell is missing. I don't know if it was stolen by Stanford or Cal or somebody, but we're going to do something silly and fun quickly right now. If you're so inclined, come on up here. We're going to take a selfie. I'm going to shoot a selfie of myself with any of you that want to be in the picture right here in front of the stage. So at least somebody come on up here so it looks like someone's interested in helping me. Come on. I have so many friends. Heather's going to be front and center on this thing. Mark asked about masks. I'm going to leave that up to each of you individually. Mine's off, but if you're more comfortable with it, leave it on. It's going to take 30 seconds. Yeah, you're good. Now, everyone, children, let's all be quiet and listen to Teacher Steve for a moment. So, quiet in the house. We got people up here. Get down there. You guys can't be in my selfie. No, you can't be in it. Everyone, listen. Oh, am I going to do it down there? Wait, am I going to go like this? Shouldn't they be facing me? Oh, okay. Okay, everyone face me, but listen for a second. I've lost my audience. The whole point of this is I'm going to share this photo and all. I'm really deficient in social media. I admit it. I'm really, really bad. But anyone who will, share it in your own social media, with friends, however you might want to do it. So again, give me one moment, and we're going to do this, and we're going to make it work. Higher, Carl, higher. I have to get way up there. We're done. Go sit down. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for playing. Oh, I see. And I'll need more guidance later. Everyone, please have a seat. Please have a seat. Welcome to all of you, including our guests. Today, the greeting line was the Climate Action Committee doing important work trying to save our planet. Thank you all. If you are a Rotarian with a guest or a guest without a Rotarian, please come up to the microphone for an introduction. You're a member, tell us who your friend is or your guest. Mike Fulton, you get to go first.
President Steve, Mike Fulton, retired banker. As you know, the Rotary has an iHouse committee, and we support San Jose State's iHouse that primarily houses international students from about 23 different countries around the world. So I wanted to introduce you to two of them today. The first is Carmen Cassata Diaz from Spain.
Carmen, come up and in 10 seconds tell us who you are and something about yourself.
Oh, I told her you didn't have to speak.
Right there. Just very briefly, where are you from and why are you here?
So I'm Carmen. I'm from Spain and I'm here as an exchange student. I study law and business management back home. And I was here last semester and this is my last semester.
Good to have you, Carmen. Thank you.
And second, but not least, we have Bunik Park. I'm sure I didn't get that name right. He's from Korea and he's majoring in social work.
Welcome. Give us a little bit about yourself.
Hello, my name is David Park and I'm here as for the exchange student for 1 year. And that's why that I'm majoring in social work, and it is my pleasure to meet you.
We hope we get to meet you again. Take care. Good luck. Thank you, Michael. Heather.
Hello, President Steve. Heather Lerner. I brought with me today my son, Noah Lerner. He is currently a gaffer living in LA full-time and came out for the week for a special gig.
Welcome, Noah. We're not going to force you to speak, so thanks for coming. Mark Lazzarini.
Hey, President Steve, I brought my beautiful wife again, Jeannie Lazzarini.
We didn't even notice you there, Mark. Welcome, Jeannie.
That's why I bring her.
Larry.
President Steve, it's my pleasure to introduce one of the many people that make me look better than I deserve in the assessor's office, my secretary, Lori Lamb.
Welcome, Lori. Thanks for coming. We have a new member to introduce. Martha and David, you want to come up? So our friend David Ginsburg is going to introduce Martha Wipenski, and let's give them full attention.
Good afternoon, everyone. We do a little better than that. Good afternoon, everyone. There we go, a little better. All right, I'm pleased to introduce Martha Wipenski, the Deputy County Executive for Santa Clara County. A social work by training, Martha has worked in a number of positions over a 36-year career. Leading up to COVID, she was responsible for coordinating all the jail reforms that the county was leading following the death of a mentally ill inmate at the hands of the correctional deputies. But with the onset of COVID, everything changed, and she pivoted to play a lead role in this region's pandemic response. It is her passion for helping the most vulnerable in our society that makes me feel she will be a phenomenal addition to our club. This passion started at an early age, back when she was at Diaz College. She used to ride her bike to her volunteer job at a homeless shelter, and then when she went to San Jose State to get her degree in social work, she similarly became a counselor in a group home for abused teenage girls. Her roots in this community are so deep, she actually can remember when Assessor Larry Stone was just a member of the city council, as she went to Fremont High School in Sunnyvale. However, Larry is the only countywide elected official for whom she has not worked, which is truly an unusual distinction to have worked for both the district attorney and the sheriff. Maybe it says something about Larry, too. Please give a warm Rotary welcome to Martha Wipenski. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I feel very warmly welcome here in the meetings I've attended so far. First and most important, David, thank you so much for that lovely introduction and your sponsorship. David and I have been colleagues at the county for many years. I'm excited that I get to introduce myself to Rotary on the same day that we have Judge Cordell here to share her wisdom with us. Our careers have crossed several times over the decades. Most recently, I supported her doing staff work for her Blue Ribbon Commission on improving jail operations. I'm very much looking forward to your presentation. Okay. Anyway, so as David mentioned, I grew up here, went to school and worked here in the area. My whole career has been in service of the county. My first 10 years were working with male and female inmates incarcerated in our jail system. From that experience, I decided I was much better doing the administrative work that supported the frontline workers. And so I spent the next couple of decades supporting the county's public safety and justice departments, as David mentioned, two of which were the district attorney and the sheriff's office, among others. About 6 years ago, I was promoted to my current job as deputy county executive in our county's administrative arm. And prior to COVID, as David said, I was responsible for coordinating all the jail reforms that followed the death of a mentally ill inmate in custody. Excuse me. Of course, then in 2020, working for the county, everything pivoted. My responsibilities became the direct COVID response with the community, as well as oversight of the COVID economic recovery for the county, and by extension, the community as well. So I'm also working to coordinate the county's work to address the very complex needs of the mentally ill inmates in our care by constructing state-of-the-art treatment and jail facilities. Then finally, on a personal note, I have very proud mother of 2 grown kids. They've flown the nest, so I'm a happy empty nester. My son is following in my footsteps in the county, and my daughter works with special needs kids at a school district in Sherlock. And so that's me. Thank you very much for your warm welcome.
We have a couple blue badges to give today. Are Alfreda and David here? I think I saw David. David, come on up. Alfreda, are you here? Yes, come on up, both of you, please. That first year goes very quickly. And I'll point out both David and Alfreda have really become engaged model citizens, model Red Badgers. Thank you both. Matt Bell, come on up. There's Matt. Matt's going to talk about membership. Please give him your undivided attention.
That was undivided, right? Thanks, Steve. And congratulations to our brand new Blue Badgers, and also welcome Martha. I think that's just a great lead-in into this update here. Would love to see all of you, more of you, if not all of you, up here at some point introducing a new member to this club. And we're talking a lot about why it's so important. Making sure this is in sync here. We know, we've talked about this, every time I come up here, sort of ad nauseum, right? Why is it important for us to continue and to be very actively recruiting new members? We're a very large club and we want to stay that way. And there are reasons for that. We can attract great speakers like Judge Cordell, like Rick Steves, and so many others that we enjoy week in and week out. Because of the large size of our club and the volume of contributions we all make to the foundation, we're able to give out a great deal of money and grants and other support in the community every year, just really increasing the impact of our club. So, and again, we it's great to have all of you here, and even more great people is going to make us even better, stronger club. So hopefully you listen to these things, these updates. We've got about 22 new members that we've added so far this year in a COVID year, pretty good. But we need about 20 more just to break even with where we started at the beginning of the year when you consider some of the folks that have left for various reasons. So just making sure you're all aware of that. Now is the time, I think, is better than ever with COVID sort of hopefully receding here. We're starting to see a little light at the end of the tunnel in terms of the requirements lifting, the statewide mask ban, all those things, mask requirement, I should say. And maybe it's a time for people who are like, oh, maybe I do feel comfortable thinking about joining a club like Rotary. So strike while the iron's hot right now. Here's just a list of all of you who have been, who've actively recruited new members this year. And how about a quick round of applause for everybody here? A lot of great names on this list of great members who are really focused on who've taken the pledge to recruit one new member. All of you who have done that, the 70 or so of you who have taken that pledge, and if you haven't yet, now's the time to reach out to that person and ask them. I always wonder, and maybe we should ask it for all new members. How were you asked? What were the circumstances? In so many cases is someone, no one ever asked me, and I just needed to be asked. So if you're thinking of someone, please do take the leap. And it's a part of that. One of the things that we're trying to do now is to take a look around the room, take a look at our membership and say, who in this community that we know, the leaders in this community, who is missing from our club and why aren't they in the club? So for the first time, and I think in quite a while, our membership committee is going to be actively doing outreach to people in the community that we think would make great Rotarians. So I guess what I'm asking you, our membership committee is doing this already. If you can think of anyone in this community in a leadership position, just a great young up-and-coming person that you think might be a good prospect for us, please send me an email with their name and what you think, and I'll include it in our list with the membership committee. We'll be reaching out to those. Of course, if you have a connection to that person, by all means, let us know. But we're hoping to very prospectively identify people that are the leaders and movers and shakers of this community, just like all of you, that we can reach out to. So please do send me a note. Thank you very much. Enjoy the lunch.
Thank you, Matt. The gala is coming up soon. I think you all know that. And I think a slide's going to appear about the gala in a moment. Nancy's been coming up, Nancy Williams, telling you about the gala. I'll just repeat what she said. This is our biggest fundraiser. It's fun. It's not incredibly expensive. Bring your friends. Donate something to the gala when you are asked. Many ways to support the gala. So given that there are no slides, apparently, that's no problem. Please support the gala, attend the gala, get excited about the gala, all of you. Thank you very much. So next up, Rod Diradon. Rod and Mark Lazzarini. Rod, it's all yours.
Cliff Docterman is a legendary Rotarian. He was the president. He lives up in the East Bay. Was Rotary International president in 92 and 93, an avid scouter. And during his time as president, he created the organization that has been now codified as the International Fellowship of Scouting Rotarians. Pardon my voice. Cliff really exemplified the best of both organizations. I was honored to receive the award when I became president in 2009, and it's my double honor to present the next award to Mark. And Jeannie, it's nice to have you here. Mark was a scouter. Like me, he didn't get his eagle, but he went up through the ranks and learned about leadership. He founded our Cub Pack 116 back in 1994, and he proceeded to found the Boy Scout Troop 116 and chaired that for many years. His sons, Daniel and Robert, are both Eagle Scouts, and he's chaired the Rotary Scout Committee for over a decade. This year, he's the chairman of the council that represents the Boy Scouts Council, that represents the Monterey Bay and Silicon Valley area. And he has been for a year, has one more year. And it's my sincere honor to present Cliff Docterman Award to Mark Lazzarini.
Thank you, and thank you, Rod, for orchestrating all that and for this award. Of course, you know, when you're in the volunteer business, you can't do it without a great support and help from home, and none of this would be possible without my wife, Jeannie, here, who has my back all these years, so thank you, Jeannie, for that. I couldn't do any of it without her. You know, I'm just one of over 5,000 volunteers in this council, serving over 8,000 youth. And there are many more volunteers that are much more committed, put a lot more into it over the decades than I ever will. But who are they? Why do they do this? They're parents, they're teachers, they're former scouts, they're adult leaders who are passionate because they've seen the benefits of this program for our youth. We use the outdoors as a platform to instill resiliency, self-esteem, leadership, community service, all those things that build character and great citizens for our community. And I don't know, we had a photo here. I was just going to tell you that Well, there's another one. Anyway, there's a photo up there of me, which is much younger than I am today. But what I wanted to point out was the smiles on the boys that were there was for our son's Eagle Court of Honor. And Daniel was the first Eagle for Troop 116. He kind of led the way, and there have been several more since then. And, you know, it was all about fun, too. I mean, the outdoor programs is our platform. We're delivering this, and that's why these volunteers are so committed, because they have witnessed the results of that program, the impact on our youth, such a positive impact. I also want to thank the Rotary for your continued sponsorship and charter as a charter organization for PAC 116 and Troop 116. Over the years, we've reached hundreds of kids. It's still going strong. And you know, Scouts and Rotary have a lot in common. I mean, they're both organizations that are over 100 years old. They're both about community service as well. And I want to point out that last year, Scouts in our council and their volunteers put over 150,000 hours in community service. So thank you again. Thank you for your support. And we look forward to seeing some more Scouts up here in the future.
Well, welcome, Mark, and a special thanks to Jason and Heather for running the Scout troop and the council, and for being Rotarians yourself. Thank you very much.
Congratulations, Mark, one of our truly nice guys in San Jose. Ed Correa.
Well, this turned out to be a good day to share this with you. You may have heard, if my slide could come up, that would help. You may have heard that there's going to be a special event in this room in slightly less than a month. This is in conjunction with International Women's Day, which is a worldwide event. Now, service clubs like ours have been having a challenge maintaining their membership. As you heard from Matt, we're doing pretty well, but other clubs, not so well. The idea behind this event was a stealth recruiting event. Yes, we're going to be promoting women and the wonderful things that they do. We're going to be promoting their leadership. We're going to be talking about breaking the bias. We've got great speakers that will be endorsing our beliefs around DEI. But the real opportunity is for each of you to sign up and bring a guest. Our best potential new members are your friends who share the feelings we do about service above self. So I'd like to encourage you to use the link that's on the screen right now. Register yourself. There's opportunities to register an entire table if you like. We're going to bring in another 10 tables in this room and pack it. Again, this is a district event, so there will be 6 clubs featured with project tables around the side talking about the good that Rotary does. I know that when I want to bring a potential non-Rotarian to the group to sign up and become a member, I'm always looking at, well, who's the speaker? Where's the good opportunity? This is that opportunity. So I'd like to have you participate with us. It takes a village to succeed. So please join us. Thank you.
Thank you, Ed. And Ed and Maggie Padavani and a few others are really working hard on this event, so please support them and please do attend. Larry Stone, would you come on up and introduce today's speaker? Let's give Larry the usual warm welcome.
All right, I'm in my comfort zone now. Doris Cordell, criminal defense attorney, personal injury lawyer, Superior Court judge, the first female African-American judge, assistant dean of the Stanford Law School, vice provost of Stanford University, independent police auditor for the city of San Jose, author, artist, pianist, accomplished composer, competitive tennis player, karate expert, but my favorite, the Rosa Parks Ordinary Citizen Award. Doris has spent her life opposing injustice and racial bias, exposing implicit bias. She counsels cities, universities, and public and private organizations on her passion, police reform, and that does not mean defund the police. constantly breaking more race and gender barriers than anyone can imagine. Today, Doris is going to talk about her life on the bench, what works, what's broken, and how to change it. It's a thought-provoking insider account of the legal system. Doris has some books to sign. In the lobby after the presentation, please welcome Judge Doris Cordell.
Good afternoon, and thank you so much for inviting me to speak to Rotary. The last time I was here, it's at least maybe 5 years ago, and I talked to everyone, and I believe this is my first in-person event where I can talk about the book. I've done over 50 book events, but they've been Zoom or podcasts, so I'm just delighted to be here. So I'm going to have to juggle a few things. So I am going to read as I give you my very brief remarks from my book entitled Her Honor. And I have images that are going to be shown, and that's up here at the laptop. And I have my notes, which I cannot put on top of the laptop. So I'm going to kind of juggle things as best I can. And you can help. All right. So I had never even thought about writing a book about my time on the bench, and I've been on the bench for nearly 20 years. And it came about because the last 7 or 8 years that I was on the bench, I started writing letters to my parents who lived just outside of Philadelphia, where I grew up, every Friday. And I'd write about everything that happened that week in the court, and I used a Friday afternoon because that's the day when trial judges have a lighter load and we get ready for the cases coming in for the week. So I wrote about everything that happened that week, the cases that I handled, how I decided cases, and I also wrote about how I felt when I felt really good about something I had done or felt really badly about something that I had done in terms of making these decisions. And these were letters, so we're not talking emails. We're talking, an envelope with a postage stamp on it, sending it off, right? It's a shame, I think, that we've gotten away from letter writing because of social media, I think, and it's important art to preserve. All right, so I retired, and a few months later, I visited my parents, and my mother, who was a very organized woman, pulls this box out of the closet, and she said, "What do you want me to do with these?" And I'm looking, and this woman had saved all of my letters. I had not made copies. So I boxed the letters up and I sent them back here to California. And it took me about 3 years before I decided to take a look at them and to start to read them. And when I did, I was stunned by the different kinds of cases over which I presided and the volume of cases. And it was then that I got the idea that maybe these might be fodder for a book. My parents are no longer with me, and sadly, but the spirit of my parents is in the book. So the purpose of my writing this book was really threefold: to educate people about our legal system. So I did not write this book for lawyers. I wrote it for everybody, anyone who had any contact with our legal system. I wrote it to educate about our legal system from the perspective of a trial court judge. I wrote it to energize readers, to fix the many things that I believe are broken in our legal system. And I wrote it to entertain. This is not some weighty, dull textbook. It is a story about my life on the bench, informed by cases that I've presided over. And in most instances, I use the real names of the litigants and the lawyers in the book. So the first chapter of the book is called Bitten by the Judge Bug. And it's about how I even got into judging. And it's a nice story. I'm just going to give it as a little teaser. If you've not purchased the book, have not read it, hopefully it's a teaser. I was at the time assistant dean at Stanford Law School, an administrator. And I also had my private law practice going in East Palo Alto. I got a phone call from a stranger, and his name was Mark Thomas. I didn't know who he was. He eventually would become a colleague of mine. At the time, he was a judge on the municipal court here in Santa Clara County. And Judge Thomas called me and said, you know, we have a judge pro tem program in Santa Clara County where lawyers, if they've practiced law for at least 5 years, can preside over small claims cases, just one case. And he said, I'm calling you because we need more women and we need people of color on our judge pro tem list. So can I add your name to the list? So I was touched by that. And I said, sure, put my name on the list. And then I forgot about it. A few months later, I get a phone call, and it's from the Sunnyvale court, and it said, your name has come up on a rotation list. Do you want to come down and preside over a case? So I did. I walk into a courtroom, and it's empty, but for the two litigants, one suing the other in small claims, and no lawyers are allowed in small claims, which is great. So, so I walked in, put on my robe, and I was stunned by what I saw, and the litigants were stunned by what they saw. I looked out, and what I saw were two Black women. And the two Black women in the courtroom looked at me, and I'm like, what the heck? So I presided over my first case where one was suing the other, and the issue was all about hair. All about hair. So that's all I'm going to tell you. I'm not going to tell you what happened in that case, what I decided, but I can tell you that when I finished and drove home that day from the court, I knew that this is what I wanted to do. I wanted to be that person in the black robe who would make decisions for people who could not work things out and make decisions on their own. And that's how my journey started. I ended up applying for a judgeship, and it took 2 years. 2 years later, I was appointed by Governor Jerry Brown in 1982. And at the time, and I did not know this, was the first African-American woman judge in all of Northern California. And you can put the next one up. To the right. To the right. There we go. There's the photo of my parents and my two daughters who are now in their 40s, where I was sworn in 1982 at Stanford Law School at my investiture. And if you can show the next one, and the person who swore me in is Felton Henderson. And Felton Henderson was an assistant dean at Stanford Law School. I ended up taking his job after he moved on to the federal bench. He has since retired, and he is probably one of the most respected federal jurists in the country. Okay, so because there are so many subjects, I cover at least 15 subjects in the book. I'm just going to talk about 3. Juries, judicial elections, and judicial independence. After which I hope we can have an interesting and I hope a provocative conversation. I presided over dozens of jury trials during my time on the bench, and involving all manners of crimes as well as civil cases where people were suing each other over money. And I love jury trials because I'm a people person. And I saw these trials as a way to introduce people to our legal system in the hope that jurors would have a good experience and feel confident about our system. Jury selection I found fascinating, amusing, and annoying when people who saw jury service akin to the plague did their best to get out of jury duty. Have any of you served on juries? Whoa, actually served. We should have an interesting conversation. You will find interest in the chapter I wrote about juries called Thank You for Your Service. So it was my hope that jurors would find it to be a positive experience, but I can understand why many avoid jury duty like the plague. So I'm going to read just a short passage from my book. Why do so many people dread serving on juries? It's my guess that the answer lies in the inordinate amount of time wasted sitting around, waiting to find out which of those summoned will be chosen. As a consequence, most people come to view jury duty as a nuisance and an inconvenience. It frequently is. Also, it doesn't help that compensation for each day of jury duty is a pittance. Jury fees range from a high of $50 per day in some states and in the federal courts to $5 a day to nothing to everything in between. California is near the bottom, coming in at just $15 per day. And that's only starting on the second day. You don't get anything for your first day. When full-time employees are called for jury duty, only 8 states and the District of Columbia require employers to pay their regular wages during jury service. So, what is to be done? I have a chapter in the book called The Fix, and you have a handout on your table that summarizes what is in the fix. And so one of the fixes I propose is that states establish jury funds to adequately compensate jurors. So you can read, we can talk more about that and discuss it, and it's in more detail in the book. So in the book, I note that one aspect of jury duty is jury selection is particularly troubling, and that's the use of peremptory challenges. And it isn't only me. In 1989, Justice Thurgood Marshall called peremptory challenges, and I quote, perhaps the greatest embarrassment in the administration of our criminal justice system. First, let me just quickly explain. Peremptory challenges allow each side in a criminal case or a civil case to excuse potential jurors for any reason. Don't even have to state a reason at all, as long as they have not been removed because of their race, their gender, their sexual orientation, or religion. And each side gets a defined number of challenges. In California, if you are charged with a felony, the prosecutor gets 10 peremptory challenges, and your attorney, defense attorney, gets 10. In 1986, the US Supreme Court issued a ruling in the case of Batson versus Kentucky, which I describe in detail in the book. And basically, under Batson, when a defendant contends that the prosecutor's peremptory challenge was racially motivated, the prosecutor has to offer to the judge a neutral explanation for removing the prospective juror. And then it's up to the trial judge to determine if that explanation is plausible. So how has that worked out? Not well. More than 30 years after Batson, trial judges around the country continue to accept superficial and outright ridiculous race-neutral excuses from prosecutors for their peremptory challenges. Here's an example I describe in the book. In 1995, a prosecutor struck 2 prospective Black jurors because of their mustaches and goatee-type beards, explaining, and I quote, "Those are the only 2 people on the jury with facial hair. I don't like the way they looked." The trial judge found the explanation to be race neutral. When the Batson case was decided, Thurgood Marshall was prescient, and he wrote a concurring opinion, joining with the majority, and he wrote this: merely allowing defendants the opportunity to challenge the racially discriminatory use of peremptory challenges in individual cases will not end the illegitimate use of the peremptory challenge. Any prosecutor can easily assert facially neutral reasons for striking a juror, and trial courts are ill-equipped to second-guess those reasons. So, what is to be done? California is leading the way to fixing this problem. In 2020, Governor Newsom signed into law the Racial Justice Act, and it was a law that was sponsored by Assemblyman Ash Kalra. Once again, from the book. California Assemblyman Ash Kalra authored a proposal for a Racial Justice Act that, and I quote, prohibits the state from seeking or obtaining a criminal conviction or from imposing a sentence based upon race, ethnicity, or national origin. The act also makes it a violation if race, ethnicity, or national origin was a factor in the exercise of peremptory challenges, whether or not purposeful. And what this act does is give the power and the responsibility to trial judges to dig deep, to uncover whether or not there is racism involved in a particular case. The judge can hold an evidentiary hearing, stop the trial, and to determine whether or not the peremptory challenges were motivated. The judge, if the judge decides that the peremptory challenge was not fair, was not just, the judge can reinstate that prospective juror. The judge can restart jury selection. What the act does, it says to trial judges, it's your responsibility to make sure that criminal cases in your courtroom are not racially motivated in any respect, in sentencing, in the charging of cases, as well as in jury selection. All right, I'm going to talk for a moment about judicial elections. As some of you may know, I was able to secure a seat on the Superior Court as a result of a countywide election in 1988. And there's a photo, there we go. And I'm being high-fived by Judge Peter Stone. He was the presiding judge at the time. I won the election and was sworn in in 1989. So there's a reason. So understand, I was elected in 1988, June, but I was not sworn in until January 1989. Why was that? You need to read the book. It was quite an experience. In my book is a chapter called Judges for Sale. And I describe that my own experience, and I describe how elections of state court judges work throughout the country. I also want to show the next one, just to give you an idea. So once thank you, it's on the bench. This is just kind of my story in hair. And if you look, I mean, at the very bottom in the middle, that's when I started, 1982, the flowing locks, you see all that? And then to the left, got a little shorter. Then as you go up, I had dreads. And then I had a box with a fake kind of Nefertiti thing going on. And then I have hardly any hair now. But the reason I show you this is, one is because I have hair that I can wear however I want to wear it. But the other is, I just felt it really important that people, when they came into a courtroom and saw someone who looked like me with hair like that, and I did get, believe me, I got double takes and frowns, but the point was to bust stereotypes and say, people can look like me and do this job and do it well. So back to elections. There are no federal elections of judges because they're appointed for life by the president. Judicial elections were first instituted in the late 1770s and the early 1800s, when the territory, it wasn't a state then, the territory of Vermont and the states of Georgia and Georgia and Indiana used them to fill seats on their lower courts. And then in 1832, Mississippi became the first state to adopt judicial elections for all of its judges. In the rest of the states at the time, governors appointed all the judges to lifetime terms during good behavior. Once again, from the book. And here we go. Today, 22 states utilize contested judicial elections. In the other 28 states, judicial selection methods range from merit selection, independent nominating commissions, to retention elections, yes or no votes on whether judges should remain in office, to gubernatorial appointments, to legislative appointments. When I ran for election in 1988, I raised about $70,000, primarily from donations from about 800 lawyers. That amount of money is a pittance compared to today's judicial races. Again, I read from the book. Today, outside special interest groups pour money into contested judicial elections, particularly when Supreme Court seats are at stake. Why those courts? Because the highest of the state courts have the final word on how state laws are interpreted. As well, they have the last say about whether verdicts in civil and criminal trials are upheld or reversed. According to the Brennan Center for Justice, 1/3 of all elected state justices currently sitting on the bench have run in at least one $1 million race. During the 2015-2016 Supreme Court election cycle, political action committees, social welfare organizations, and other non-party groups engaged in a record $27.8 million of outside spending, making up an unprecedented 40% of overall Supreme Court election spending. Unsurprisingly, 56% of that money was contributed by lawyers, lobbyists, and corporate interests. And then there's an even bigger problem with these judicial elections. It's the impact that they have on judicial decision-making. Kate Berry of the Brennan Center for Justice analyzed 15 years of television advertising data for state Supreme Court elections to gauge the ad's impact on judicial decision-making in criminal cases. Generally, the ads attacked judges for being soft on crime or praised them as tough on crime. 3 of Berry's key findings were that 1, the more frequently ads aired during an election, the less likely state Supreme Court justices were to rule in favor of criminal defendants. 2, closer to their re-elections, trial judges in Pennsylvania and Washington sentenced defendants convicted of serious felonies to longer sentences than normally imposed for those crimes. And 3, trial judges in Alabama imposed death sentences more often in election years, sometimes overriding life sentence verdicts handed down by juries. Judges are not politicians. Politicians make promises to voters to appeal to whatever it is their constituents want, and that's fine. But unlike politicians, judges are independent. The only promises that judges can ever make is to adhere to the rule of law, to legal principles, and to constitutional precedent. Judges are held accountable, yes, by appellate courts who review their rulings and their decisions, by disciplinary commissions, and by properly run recall elections. It is my view that judicial elections should be done away with entirely and be replaced with independent nominating commissions that are bipartisan, appointed by diverse stakeholders, and include non-lawyers and lawyers, and have criteria for vetting candidates for judgeships. The nominating process should be open and transparent, with publicly available data about the diversity of applicants and nominees. Now, we have that in California. In California, we have something called the Jenny Commission, JNE, that is the Judicial Nominees and Evaluation Commission. However, there's a little problem. Once again, from the book. 16 states already utilize this approach, so we know that it works. However, in 2 of those 16 states, Maryland and California, their governors can ignore their commission's recommendations and choose someone not on the list of nominees. That practice should end. Governors should stick to the nominee list, that is, the candidates who have been vetted by the commissions, and these to do otherwise, then these commissions are simply window dressing. Until we rid ourselves, however, of judicial elections, it may take a while, we need to do a better job of educating voters. I can't tell you how many times I have gotten phone calls the night before ballots are due from neighbors saying, so-and-so was on the ballot for judgeship. What should I do? Who is that person? How should I vote? And we need meaningful voter guides that include detailed profiles of judicial candidates, including any of the results of evaluations by lawyers that are occasionally conducted by the courts. I also think that lawyers who are seeking judgeships should be required to audition for the job by serving as judge pro tems, as I did before I decided I wanted to go on the bench. And when they are sitting there as a judge pro tem, they can be evaluated by nominating commission members. So the final topic I want to discuss is judicial independence. In a chapter I titled J'accuse, Judges Under Attack, I began with this. There is frequently no warning or signal that a judge's decision is destined to blow up in her face. It could be her umpteenth sentencing decision in her umpteenth criminal case, but for whatever reason, one decision takes on a life of its own with disastrous consequences. That's what happened to Santa Clara County Superior Court Judge Aaron Persky. In 2016, Judge Persky presided over the criminal trial of a 19-year-old Stanford freshman who was charged with sexual assault of a 22-year-old woman, a college graduate. Both were at a fraternity party on the campus at Stanford, and both were highly intoxicated. A jury convicted the student who, before he was even charged with any crime, had been expelled from Stanford. After Judge Persky sentenced the student to 6 months in jail, the recommended sentence by the probation department, all hell broke loose. He became the target of a recall campaign coordinated by a female Stanford law professor, outraged that the judge had not imposed a state prison sentence. What the recall deliberately ignored was that the punishment handed down by Judge Persky included ordering that 19-year-old freshman to register as a sex offender for the rest of his life. Convicted murderers who have served their sentences are not required to register as murderers at all. The student's punishment, when you consider that, was harsher than that of someone who had taken someone else's life. Before the recall was over, the name Persky would become infamous throughout the country and beyond. Recalls of judges are unique to the states. Federal judges cannot be recalled, no matter how controversial their decisions. The California Constitution allows for the recall of elected officers, including judges. All that is needed is to collect the required number of signatures of registered voters to place the recall on the ballot for no reason. Simply put, disagree with a judge's ruling, and she can be targeted for a recall, even when that ruling is entirely lawful. I became a spokesperson on Judge Persky's behalf in opposing the recall. I spoke up because the recall campaign lied about the judge's track record, because the sentence he imposed was within his discretion and entirely lawful, because the judge was not legally permitted to speak about the case. Before the recall, judges had no right of self-defense. So you could be charged with a murder and of course have a right of defense, self-defense, but judges were not allowed to speak about anything if their cases were pending. That rule in California has now changed as a result of the recall of Judge Persky, but at the time, he could say nothing. So I spoke up on his behalf. And most importantly, I spoke up because the recall was a threat to judicial independence. And here we go. It is one thing to recall a judge for an act of malfeasance, but it is quite another to recall a judge for making a lawful decision that we don't like. Think about it. Judges take an oath to defend and to bear true faith and allegiance to the Constitution. But today, a judge can lose her job if, in defending the Constitution and bearing true faith and allegiance to it, she renders a decision that happens to be controversial. Putting the judicial finger to the wind to gauge public opinion is fast becoming the standard for judicial decision-making. And when that happens, when the cacophony of the mob determines how judges decide their cases, our independent judiciary becomes our dependent judiciary. So what are we to do? How do we ensure that our state court judges maintain their independence? This is a serious issue because if we lose our independent judiciary, we lose our already fragile democracy. The answer that I propose in the fix is to strictly limit judicial recalls to instances of judicial malfeasance or failure to perform the duties of the office, or to judges who have been convicted of serious crimes. That is the way it is done in Georgia and Montana. Recalls in these two states can never be based on a judge's lawful decision, be it discretionary or mandated by law, no matter how controversial. The revision of California's recall system would require an amendment to the California Constitution. And if our legislators won't take the lead in changing that law, then we, the people, the voters, can do so using the initiative process. I'm going to wrap up with just a very brief statement about race. And how can I not, being the first Black woman judge in all of Northern California? And there are two very short passages from the book, and I hope will stimulate some discussion. Race has always been the elephant in the courtroom. With the murder of George Floyd in May 2020 and the dramatic rise of the Black Lives Matter movement, racial disparities, long apparent in criminal prosecutions, sentencings, and incarcerations across the country, are finally front and center in the public discourse. The elephant has exited the courtroom and entered the world stage, giving to judges not only permission, but also the obligation to call out the legal system's failings. And this, my tenure on the criminal court bench was a conflicted one. By simply donning my robe, I knew that I lent legitimacy to a system that disproportionately targeted people of color. The majority of cases over which I presided involved defendants who looked like me. My presence on the bench gave defendants of color hope that they would be seen not as a bunch of gangbangers, thugs, and drug addicts, but as human beings. And it would allow for the possibility, perhaps that many, perhaps most, were better than the worst crimes they had ever committed. One of my life's sad recognitions is that it is far easier to understand the humanity of even the most egregious of offenders when that person resembles you, less so when she does not. Finally, I want you to understand that there is much that is good about our legal system. The very principles that are the foundation of the system and our nation are the best in the world, that all are created equal and entitled to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that all have the right to a speedy trial, a right to trial by jury, a right against self-incrimination, the right to due process. The problem is in the implementation of those principles. The propertied white men who established these principles, many of whom owned people who looked like me, did not contemplate that these principles would apply to women, to poor people, and to people of color. Our challenge is to ensure that those principles that are so wonderful that underlie our legal system are applied equally and fairly to all. So in closing, I leave you with this. This is from the very last sentence of the book. Judging has been the most fulfilling of my various careers. For nearly 20 years, I wielded power over the lives of thousands of people. And for nearly 20 years, I did what I believed to be right. While it is up to the next generation of voters, politicians, activists, lawyers, law professors, and judges to continue to clear the path to a more perfect union, I refuse to give up on our legal system, and I will never give up on our judiciary. Hopefully, neither will you. Thank you.
Thank you, Judge Cordell. I think when Paul Harris and his friends invented Rotary, that's what they had in mind. Can you stay a few minutes extra for questions today?
Absolutely.
We're right up against the deadline. I know there are a number of questions that are going to come up. I'd like to ask you all, please, if you need to leave now or at 1:15, please feel free to do so, but please do it quietly and respectfully. First question will be Arthur Weisbrot, but a reminder, if you have a red badge, you get to move up to the front of the line for questions. So feel free to do so. Before we go into Q&A, we are going to make a donation on behalf of Judge Cordell to the African American Composer Initiative that I know is dear to her heart. And interestingly, my dad, who was a jazz musician, loved some of these same composers, Doris, that I know you do. So, Judge Weisbrot.
Thank you very much for your remarks, Judge Cordell. It's nice to see you.
I'll answer for her, Arthur.
Yeah, good, good. So what about life appointment for the federal judges? It's a controversial area now. You're appointing people political at age 45 who are going to be there for 50 years or more. And there's some concern about whether that should continue to be. And do you support life appointment or a fixed term with really very little chance of being removed for state court judges?
First, thank you, and good to see you, my friend. With regard to federal appointments, as I said, judges all in the federal system are appointed for life. And specifically, there's been a lot of talk about the U.S. Supreme Court. Should there be term limits, and should it be expanded? My view is the Supreme Court should be greatly expanded. There should be more people on the court, and there should be term limits. They should serve for a specific time, and they would be staggered, so you wouldn't have the court emptied, obviously. I'm not an expert on the subject, but I have seen enough, I have read enough to know that what we have now is not working. It is an entirely, in my view, a political body, and it saddens me greatly how the respect for the U.S. Supreme Court, by the way, a recent poll showed it's at its lowest it's ever been. People just do not respect what is happening in the courts, and I understand that. So I don't know what's happening, but there are scholars who are looking at this, and commissions that are looking at it. I don't think there should ever be any lifetime appointments for anyone on the judiciary, state or federal. I don't. It's just the matter of if they want to stay on, there should be a process that is out of politics and one that is open and transparent so that we can all understand who these people are that have all this power over so many people's lives.
Thanks for coming and speaking to us today. You may very well have just answered my question, but I saw your sheet on the table and you had reforms that you felt were necessary and then fixes. And I was just wondering, specific to the federal Supreme Court, you know, you just pointed one out at least, but are there others that you think are big concerns that need to be reformed?
Well, I'm not an expert on the Supreme Court. I'm only giving you, again, a sense of what I think needs to at least we start to look at. And I also wanted to say to you all that right now, you know, they're looking at a vacancy, and the president has said he wants to appoint a Black woman, and some people have gone into conniptions over that. Why can't it just be the most qualified? And I say to people, it has been 233 years the court has been in existence, and there have been 115 people who have served on the court. And of that 115, only 3 in 233 years have been people of color, and none have been a Black woman. So when you think about what the US Supreme Court does, which is they work by consensus, they meet, they have conferences when they have a case, and they discuss it, and they bring in their different viewpoints. And of course they have different viewpoints because they're individuals from different backgrounds. To have the viewpoints, well, first, there is nothing, and I think if you're on the conservative side, in the middle, or on the liberal side, I don't think anyone has a problem with the notion of inclusion. That if you have a democracy in America, it means being inclusive. And our Supreme Court is not inclusive. It has never had an Asian American on the US Supreme Court. So it is, I think, important to have a Black woman to bring her experience to the discussions in the room when decisions are made about cases. So I'm glad that a Black woman is being considered. And I will tell you, by the way, just as an aside, I've gotten some emails with people saying, yeah, you should serve on the court. You should be. And my answer to them is, one, I cannot for two reasons. One is my dotage. I'm way too old. And I think a younger person should be on. The second is I just could not put up with the foolishness from Clarence Thomas.
Thank you for being here. This may be a loaded question, but I can
load it up.
In short, who's lawyering the lawyers? And I say that in the context of that there's side personal and professional challenges currently. It's like ADA as an example, or more recently PEGA issues, and the forced has been defined to me as essential legal extortion by going into settlement because of a cost to go into court, to fight one's fight. As a small business person, I'm not a lawyer. The law is so darn complex, you have no choice but to seek out that support. And yet, in that support, you're generally in a case pushed to settle at obscene amounts of money because it's more obscene to fight what you might believe is the right fight, only with the context of losing. So who's lawyering the lawyers? Who polices the
I wish I had an answer for you, and I do understand what you're saying, where the courts, our legal system, has become a place where if you have the money, then you can survive in it. You can fight the battles, and if not, then there's this way out of settling, and even when you feel it's not right. I want to tell you, I have a chapter in the book that takes off on this subject, but it's not in the civil side where you have businesses coming in, but it's on the criminal side, and it's called plea bargains, where defendants feel that they are forced to plead when they claim they're innocent. Did you know that 98% of all criminal cases in the federal and state systems are settled with plea bargains? 98%. And then think also about how many exonerations there have been in this country where people have been sentenced long terms in prison and found to have been factually innocent, but they pled in a plea bargain because they did not want to take the risk of going to trial. So, these same issues are there. I don't purport to be able to solve all of these issues, but you have absolutely hit on one where who is the system serving? It's supposed to be a legal system for all of us, but it tends not to be. So I think it's important that you continue to raise this issue. I hope you will read the book and maybe relate to how I see the system, again, not being attuned to folks who don't have the money to be able to work in the system. So again, it's a good system in terms of principles, but we have a lot of work to do. I'm sorry, I couldn't be more specific in responding.
First off, thank you for all the service you've done in so many ways in our community. You asked earlier about jury service. I actually, 2 or 3 years ago, served 7 months on a criminal jury, so I know what that's like. It wasn't well, it doesn't matter. That isn't the point of my question. So there was kind of what I would call an anomaly that just happened the other day in a case that I have relatively little interest in except for what happened. And that was the Palin New York Times case where the judge came out with a position while the jury was out deliberating. How does that strike you from a point of view of propriety of process?
So the Palin case, Sarah Palin had sued the New York Times for libel because the New York Times had printed something that she said was not true, and it was not true. And I don't know how many, a day later, how many hours, the New York Times corrected and published a correction. And she sued because under libel law, if a newspaper prints something about you and they have done it, even if it's false, you can't sue. But if it's done with reckless disregard for the truth and the jury accepts that, then you have, that person prevails in their suit of libel. So that's in the Palin case. She sued the New York Times, and while the jury was out deliberating, the trial judge said, no matter what the jury comes back with, I am going to dismiss this case because the facts do not show a reckless disregard for the truth. That's what he said. I don't believe the jurors heard it because they were deliberating. So all I can say is that, and I believe that's in federal court, but what I can say is that judges have so much power. So even if a jury came back and said, we find in favor of Sarah Palin, the law gives to judges the power to absolutely throw out the jury's verdict and impose the judge's own verdict, stating reasons. So the judge stated, no matter what they come back with, I'm going to throw this case out. Now, why the judge decided to say that when they were out deliberating, I do not know. And the jury came back, of course, and found that the New York Times did not act with reckless disregard for the truth and did not rule in her favor. So I don't know what was in that judge's head, but the judge had the power to do it. But why the judge announced it, that this is what the judge was going to do, I have no idea.
Two more questions, Noah, then Carl, and then we will retire. Go ahead, Noah.
And I do want to add 1 second that I do have books. If people would like to purchase a book, that's right out there in the hall. Okay.
Hi, Judge Cordell. I had a question with regards to the election of judges and their recall. You mentioned that the mob mentality can be a threat to our democracy. And I was wondering what your beliefs are with regards to what is the difference between a mob mentality and democracy and the voice of the people?
Sure. And thank you for that question. And it is a very important distinction to make. Democracy is of the people. So when people peacefully protest, do sit-ins, I have done that as well. That's a part of democracy. People need to be heard, particularly those who have power. So when I talk about the mob mentality, I talk about lies, I talk about misrepresentations that are then put out there. And it's happening with social media more than ever now. And it terrifies me, it frightens me, because it only takes one tweet, one observation, and then someone puts it out and everyone picks up on it without actually looking at facts. And you've heard, I mean, you've had actually people say things like, well, these are alternative facts. What are we talking about? What have we become? So that is what I'm talking about. So protesting, it is a part of America. Absolutely. And I'm concerned about, when I say the mob mentality, of people picking up on things where there is no basis in fact, running with it and destroying lives. That's my concern. And I'm telling you, that is exactly what happened to Aaron Persky. It's so interesting that he was a judge on the bench for 13 years and was one of the, just so highly respected by so many people. And I remember talking to him one day and he just said to me, I have no idea what happened. Just one day I made this decision and then his whole world ended, just like that. I'll tell you, today I would not want to be a judge, a state court judge, because of social media. Any decision, and it's very hard to push back when these untruths come out. So I give kudos to judges today, and I encourage them to be courageous and strong, because it's really, really hard to do in the age of social media. Thank you so much for that question.
And to add to that, I have to tell you that your idea for us to go to the proposition process, to take in your recommendation here, there's so much money now. Your $70,000 run is now a $7 million run because of Citizens United, I believe. What's your opinion on Citizens United? And can that ever be turned around? Because until it is, I don't think anything you're talking about is really we're going to have much power.
Absolutely. I write about Citizens United in the book, in the chapter, Judges for Sale. How does that change? We need Congress to just enact some legislation that puts limits. And we're not going to get Congress to do it as long as people are so divided in the Senate and in our Congress. And that saddens me as well. There's so much division, not enough real discussion, honest discussion, which is just fading away right now. And I'm just so concerned about the fragility of our democracy, especially, as I pointed out, with the judiciary. So we have 3 legs to our democracy: executive, legislative, judiciary. If one of those legs gets pulled out, we don't have a democracy. And my concern is the judiciary is under attack, and then we have a legislative bodies in Congress, we've got the Senate, the House of Representatives, and everyone's going at everybody, and we're not getting things done, and it's very, very scary. So, but that being said, I'm ever hopeful. I'm ever hopeful that, as history shows us, the people in this country, we will somehow pull it together and maintain our democracy. Thank you all so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Judge Cordell, for absolutely top-notch presentation today. You are welcome to come back here anytime. We were talking about targeted members. You're my target, Judge Cordell. All of you, thank you. Have a great week. We'll see you next week.